Okay, so on a previous video I talked about how after running the Sniper EFI setup, I noticed that the car would sometimes have a little bit of a hard time starting, and I want to focus or emphasize the word little bit, meaning if you have your foot off the gas pedal and you hit the switch, sometimes it wouldn't start, or sometimes you'd actually have to like hit the gas pedal a little bit. So really minor, not at all affected by temperature or any of the stuff that you would have with a carburetor. But I wanted to see what I could do to mitigate that. So I had played with the fuel prime settings. So the Sniper comes set up to prime at 150% of normal fuel output on initial start and a couple seconds after startup. But after taking it to my mechanic and playing around for a little bit, we did a couple other things and kind of hit on the idea that, you know, I'm running a dual plane intake, and there is some discussion out there that dual plane intakes don't always work perfectly with EFI. And reading up on the Holley forums, people recommend going with a 1-inch spacer, and that seems to really remedy problems for people. So my mechanic and I agreed that maybe that's what I need to do. So I installed a 1-inch spacer, and then the car just really ran poorly, if at all. And I'll try to put some of that video in here. I'm not really good at video editing, so I'll do my best. But you'll get the idea. Depending on, you know, wherever I end up splicing that video together, it ran bad. So with the 1-inch spacer underneath the EFI system, it just really messed up the fuel mixture, and I think it really confused the computer as well. And I can get into that a little bit, but I think the computer was confused on what to do and was just sucking a ton of air. So anyway, I got on the phone, so I got the 1-inch spacer installed. It raised the EFI up so high that it actually changed the geometry of my throttle linkage, and I'm going to show you guys that in a little bit. Something to, you know, be aware of. If you do this, if you have a dual plane intake and you do go with a 1-inch spacer, which I'm thinking I might recommend that you do that, but be prepared for it to make some changes, you know, across the board. It's going to change the geometry of your throttle linkage. If you already have EFI and then you make that change, you're going to go and have to, you know, do a tune and stuff. But let me show you how the car is doing now. So we've got the 1-inch spacer. I've remedied the problems with the throttle linkage and got that working right. And then I got on the phone with Holley tech support this morning, and we remapped the fuel supply in cold temperatures and at start. So the Sniper is apparently set up to be pretty lean on startup and cold temperatures, at least relative to Holley's other EFI products. So we upped the fuel settings on both startup and cold start all the way up to like 100 degrees or something like that. And then we did a IAF reset. So that's your initial air whatever. It's the computer's ability to regulate how much air it's taking in on idle. That's what IAF is. Well, you can do a hard reset on that. We had to do that as well. And I'm not suggesting that any of you guys do any of this based on this video alone, other than if you are going to go with a spacer, you know, be advised it's going to change some stuff. And the guys at Holley are really good. I was on the phone with them for a half an hour and we figured it all out. And the car, I think, is running better than ever. I mean, I took it out today and it's, you know, I don't want to swear. This is a family channel. It's hauling cojones. So it's all good. I'm going to show you a start, then show you what we did with that spacer and the throttle linkage, and then I'm going to try to splice in sort of the quote-unquote before video of what happened after I put that spacer and how bad the car ran. So it's all good. You just have to be ready to go in and play with all these settings. So once again, power on. Car should be primed and ready to go. I don't have my foot on the gas pedal. Let's see how she do. Stumbled for just a second there, but now we're... So it always starts up at a little bit higher RPM than what you set it at. So generally, on my car, it's going to fall down to about 850. And overall, it's happy. So I want to show you the spacer and what I did with the linkage. And then I might show you what we did to remedy the problems that we ran into. So you can see that's a full 1-inch spacer underneath the EFI. And look at my linkage. I had to bend the heck out of it because it raises the whole carburetor up. The original linkage was hitting right here. It connects right there. So I had to give it a lot of bend in order to be able to clear when you hit the gas pedal. So just something to be aware of. And so to fix the problem we had to go back and do some tuning. So in the last video, I showed you basic tuning. To fix this problem, we actually had to go advanced. So first off, you go home, tuning, go advanced, wrong button, advanced fuel. And so here you see all your settings for fuel in various areas. So I focused on cranking and after start fuel. So cranking fuel, it's actually got this graphical input, and if you have a stylus that came with your EFI, you can use it here, so long that you're set up for graphical input. The bottom right hand corner says options. Click that and double check that you've got, see, it went back. The factory setting is to go digitally. Click on graphically, and you can use your stylus to just drag all those dots around. So see how I have a very flat fuel curve from the left hand bottom corner? That's basically temperature. So I went, and initially it was set at below 62.4, not quite halfway, but probably around 50, and it fell from there. So I raised the fuel settings from the coldest temperature all the way up to around 100 to be right at 62.4. Then at 100 it starts dropping down from there. Notice the vertical pink line, that's where the car is at currently. So this is a real-time display, and you know, as this video progresses, if the car gets warmer, it's going to move. So that's the first thing I did, was I made a very flat fuel curve from any temperature, you know, all the way to the left to about 100 degrees before it drops. So when you're starting, you want to have a little bit richer mixture. That's what we did. You can use your stylus to do that, or you can go with the digital display and just toggle numbers back and forth there. So that is cranking. And then after start fuel, I can't remember what we did here. We made very minor changes here. All the way up again till about 100 degrees. We dragged each dot up like a millimeter, like the width of the tip of the stylus, just to make sure the car has a little bit more fuel on startup than it did with the initial config. Not gonna save any of this. And then beyond that, we reset the IAF. So tuning idle on this car, if you have the computer modulating the air input and you're trying to tune the idle, oftentimes it can get confused. And when you put that spacer underneath the EFI, it can get very confused. So what we did was we blocked the IAF, which is the single port that you see behind the 4 intake ports on the EFI itself. And that basically forces the car to just use the air coming in through the standard intakes, not through the IAF port. I can do a video on that later if you guys want me to. I'm not really an expert on this. I'm just telling you a little bit what we did. There may be an argument for either not using a dual plane, or if you do have a dual plane, making sure that you do use a spacer, because my car is starting easier and I want to say it's running better, but we just had to make some changes on how everything was working. It didn't take long at all. It took me a half an hour on tech support with the Holley guys, and I'm not an expert on this stuff, so if I can do it, you can do it. Just don't be afraid to call the dudes at Holley. All right, have fun, rock on.